A lot of the ideas came from Simon, so maybe I should let him talk about that, because a lot of the stuff came from his granddad, who was a bit of a boozing alcoholic guy. And a lot of what I brought was kind of terrible holidays that I've been on in my life, because I'm not very good at going on holiday and sort of just relaxing. I kind of always want an event, and I sort of think it's going to be like the movies, where you're going to go and find amazing things and eat exotic food and meet beautiful people and do strange things. And it's normally just a bit like sitting in a pub and getting drunk in Poland and going, how is this what I've come thousands of miles for? And so I was interested in doing a kind of anti-road movie. And then the idea of sort of setting it in somebody's memories came from sort of, there's this sort of turn of the 17th, 18th century book called Voyage Around My Room, which is written by this guy who was in prison, and but written in the style of like grand travel writing. So it's all, today I shall conquer the windowsill and see what vista lies, and I really like the idea of kind of trying to find trying to sort of tell this story in a small space, that you kind of go, you remember your holiday through and your life, I think, through mementos and the way you make anecdotes out of things. Like I was sort of interested in the idea that people will ask you about a relationship, and if you split up with somebody or something, and they go, oh, what happened there? You great, and you go, oh, well, I was ill, and then you went away, and and you get it down to like a one-sentence story, and this need that we have to kind of anecdotalize and turn into kind of potted biography. I think we're all secretly writing our own Wikipedia entries as we go along, and I kind of wanted to have somebody who's failed to do that. I think for me the biggest challenge was writing, because I'd written a couple of plays before, but I hadn't written anything that had ever been filmed, so that was kind of quite a nerve-wracking thing. It's not an expensive film, and the aspiration of the Mighty Boosh TV show was always quite high. It was always not to kind of make stuff that looks like The X Factor or something, but to try and make something that looked like mini movies. So in a way, that looks-wise, it was on comparatively firm grounds, but the idea of suddenly having complete control over what people say and was kind of quite nerve-wracking. And but technically the hardest thing I think was we did lots of models and lots of stop frame stuff, which I'd never done before and was quite exciting and different. And so there was a lot of kind of, we sort of had to film every scene a couple of times, because we'd have to film the backgrounds and kind of get, a newspaper model with papier-mâché cars going through it, ready to be, projected in the background, so that when we had Julian for a couple of days, there was a background that made sense. So there were big technical challenges, and obviously desperately trying to get everyone to do it for very little money was tough. But people were so generous with their time, it wasn't that difficult. Weirdly, I more had people in mind for the smaller roles. Simon I kind of wrote with Simon in mind, so that was fairly easy casting. But Ed and Veronica I didn't know, and we found them through auditions. And I tried to find people who were a bit like what they were like, and kind of, there's this kind of Eric Romer story about how he'd kind of write a script, meet the actors, and then completely rewrite the script. And I sort of tried to take that approach. So a lot of the kind of minutiae of Ed's part, like Ed's quite an OCD sort of person, and he has to insist that kind of like the lights are turned off and that sockets are turned off at the wall even if nothing's plugged into them, and he kind of rearranges little things all the time, and I sort of built a lot from that, and a lot of Simon's stuff is from his own massive gambling problems. But I certainly wrote Richard, Noel and Julian's parts with them in mind, because I wanted to give them something that they're not used to doing. And obviously Noel and Julian play these two kind of quite trendy, well, Noel especially, Camden-y type people, and I like the idea of them playing something completely different and sort of getting Julian to be a tramp and Noel to be an alcoholic matador. They're a bit of a stretch from their normal, but they're such good character actors that it felt like it'd be nice to give them something they might want to do. I like the idea, this sort of slightly adolescent idea that you kind of, I don't know if you ever had this, but where you sort of imagine that you're like the star of your own movie, that there's like a biopic being made around you. And I like the idea that, which I think quite a lot of people have, probably idiots like me, and I quite like the idea that Ed's character, Stephen, is so kind of nervous that he can't imagine himself being the lead in his own film, which is kind of why it's called Bunny and the Bull rather than The Strange Adventure of Stephen Turnbull or something, that he kind of, he's always got somebody else as his lead, and he's so kind of handsome and charismatic and lovely, but he doesn't realise that he is, and I like the idea of somebody who's kind of, this worship's got out of control. I mean, not that he really worships Bunny, he kind of sees him for who he is, but he he wants that isn't in his own personality. And a lot of that's quite inspired by Brideshead Revisited and the kind of Charles-Sebastian relationship where, you know, you've got somebody who's kind of a flawed, charismatic guy, but and somebody slowly realising their problems, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with them. But I think Ed gets a good time out of Bunny. Stephen gets a good time out of Bunny, and I think Bunny gets a witness. I think he needs to be watched doing these things, or they mean nothing. And there's this line towards the end of the film where he goes, "I need you," and I think that's the important thing, that he actually needs Stephen much more than Stephen really needs him, and he'll slowly realise that. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that, and it was. I think that's what kind of gives us hopefully a kind of nice, rich, textured film, rather than a sort of. You know, I really didn't want people to think, oh, it's some kind of TV comedy spin-off. It's a proper film with proper characters and emotions and you know, narrative drive. And you know, I like sad things and funny things, so I stuck them both in a film and hope they work side by side. But we'll see when it comes out. I think my favourite scene is when Bunny fights the bull. Definitely, I love the bull. I love the fact that hopefully we've managed to get the audience to a stage where they can kind of willingly accept a bull made of kind of clock parts and kitchen utensils with a steam iron for a nose. And I think Simon's great in it, and the stop frame's great. And for me, it's a really touching scene because you've sort of, by this point, you've realised what a kind of bullshitter that Bunny is, but he's kind of capable of this one great thing. And there's this photograph I saw of Klaus Kinski, who was kind of relentless, kind of self-mythologizer and kind of liar and self-aggrandizer. And then there's this picture of him in a field where he's just like more or less covered in butterflies, and it's like the animals have come to him. And it always seemed amazing that these people who kind of big themselves up relentlessly, and you might end up really disliking them, they've still got that certain magic. And I love the fact that Bunny manages his dance with the bull, and it's his kind of moment of glory before he dies. And I'm really fond of that, yes. From the bullfight to Stephen back at home is my favourite bit of the film.